The Legend of Zelda is a franchise that has changed numerous times throughout its history. For nearly 40 years, Nintendo has brought to life this fantastical world of monsters and heroes. And with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, it's only a matter of time before we get a new mainline title. And it's been on my mind a lot, the topic of a new Legend of Zelda game. For a while now, there have been plenty of people theorizing and speculating what a new title could look like, and even a possible sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I know Age of Imprisonment is coming out later this year, but it's a spin-off, so I won't be including it in today's discussion. With that, I do believe Tears of the Kingdom could be worthy of a sequel, or a reimagining of sorts. Now, before you rush to the comment section to share your opinions, hear me out first. You may be thinking that there's so much content that has already been poured into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and you'd be right, but I believe that there is more room to push this incarnation of the Zelda series even further. Now, what I'm about to get into is a mini critique of Tears of the Kingdom. Know that the thoughts and things that are shared in this video are my opinions. They are not facts. So with that out of the way, let's just jump right in. Tears of the Kingdom left so much to be desired from the game, at least for me. While Nintendo added 2 new areas of the map to explore, as well as a complex cave system, the Sky Islands and the depths felt very underutilized compared to the rest of the overworld. This, as well as reusing the overworld from Breath of the Wild, made Tears of the Kingdom feel underwhelming. While it is a fantastic game, Tears of the Kingdom didn't do enough to make it feel special. I know that plenty of other games have taken a similar approach to sequels, the Insomniac Spider-Man games, for example, but all of those games have felt like a true continuation and expansion on a previous story, whereas Tears of the Kingdom feels like a soft restart. There are a lot of aspects of Tears of the Kingdom that feel redundant and reused, or even flat out ignoring the world that Breath of the Wild previously established. Tears of the Kingdom follows the same rough game narrative as Breath of the Wild did. Link is defeated in battle, he goes to sleep, he wakes up on an isolated section of the map, and he encounters a strange ghost-like figure who just so happens to be a king of Hyrule. He goes to 4 shrines to obtain a cool ability, and then at the climax of the game's tutorial, the king tells Link to go find Zelda. Now in Tears of the Kingdom, Link travels to the surface world from the Great Sky Island and discovers that the same 4 regions that were being plagued with the Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild are now experiencing 4 new crises. You complete each of the temples with help from the sages of each of the 4 species, and then you go to Hyrule Castle to defeat Ganon, except it's fake Ganon, and we've been chasing a fake Zelda across the map this entire time. So after that battle in Hyrule Castle, you find out that there is a secret 5th temple with a secret 5th sage ability to unlock. So after you complete the 5th temple, it's on to fight the real Ganon. So in an epic battle that makes 0 sense in the context of the story, Link defeats Ganon and saves Zelda and Hyrule. Roughly, the story is the exact same in both of these titles. Now you can probably make an argument that most modern Zelda titles follow this similar story narrative, and you'd probably be right, but all of them have created a new world except for Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is a story of the Triforce incarnation, but it exists in an already created incarnation. Whichever way Nintendo decides to go with Tears of the Kingdom, whether it's abandoning the thought of doing a sequel to this game altogether, or doing it, or making a reimagining of sorts, whatever it is, Tears of the Kingdom will always be an underwhelming game. There are a lot of glaring issues with Tears of the Kingdom. That's not to say Breath of the Wild didn't have its issues, but because Tears of the Kingdom is marketed as a sequel to Breath of the Wild, these issues pop up much more frequently. I don't want to keep you here for long and turn this video into a retrospective or documentary of sorts, but if you do have roughly 3.5 hours of time to spare, I highly recommend watching Skitty Bitty's video, I Hate Tears of the Kingdom. It is a very well-made video, and Skitty goes into great detail about all the problems that plague this game. The things that Skitty is critical of, they are very critical of, so keep that in mind if you have not watched this video yet. I will go over some of the issues in this game, just not all of them. I'm going to do my best to work through the main story of this game and point out the major flaws with the main areas you explore throughout the game's main quests, starting with the Sky Islands. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island is blueprinted from Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau. It's where the game's tutorial takes place. And I don't have a problem with this at all. If this is someone's first Zelda game, they need to know how the game works, and the Great Sky Island accomplishes this goal perfectly. The Sky Islands are visually stunning and beautifully crafted. And that's about it. There is very little explanation as to why the Sky Islands are even up here. We do know that some pieces of the islands fell to the surface during the upheaval, but that's all we know. The player is never told why the Sky Islands even exist. There is one instance where Rauru does tell the player that the Temple of Time used to be on the surface and it made its way up to the sky, and we can confirm that with one of the memories in the game, but how did it even get up here? What is it doing up here? I truly think that the Sky Islands only exist to serve the purpose of being an area for the player to explore. In a developer interview, Hidemaru Fujibayashi said, quote, "The actions you take to get there and the exploration of the Sky Islands themselves are both a lot of fun. The new actions in Sky Area were such novelties to us that we added one Sky Island after another to test out the different gameplay elements. Then one day, the designers scolded us. They said we made the skies messy by adding too many islands." So the intention was for Sky Islands to be used as testing grounds for the game's new elements, but the designers said that they were too cluttered. And now we have a sky that is half-baked, it's empty, and we still have no explanation as to why they even exist. I mean, it's generally mind-boggling how little content is actually up here. To make matters worse, the fact that the sky even exists invalidates the need to traverse the surface. Shrines being the sky makes it so easy to just warp to one, jump down, grab a wing, flying machine, or air bike, and just get to where you need to go. One thing that Nintendo added with Tears of the Kingdom was coordinates. They aren't really that practical at all, but I guess it does give the player a little bit of idea where Link is relative to the center of the map. But what coordinates existing means is that now we can tell how high up Link is in Hyrule. The tallest point on Breath of the Wild's map was around here on Death Mountain. It's at about 900 units, meters, feet, kilometers, I don't know. Whatever the game uses to measure, we'll just call them units for now. But it's at 900 units above ground level. Now in Breath of the Wild, this would be a height that is normally very difficult to reach via climbing and walking. But in Tears of the Kingdom, yeah, so these are a problem. The Skyview towers completely nullify the use of climbing tall mountains or hills. While Breath of the Wild did have towers, they didn't break the game nearly as much as the Skyview towers do in Tears of the Kingdom. And one thing that makes this even worse is that some of the Skyview towers launch Link higher than others. You can instantly gain verticality practically unheard of in Breath of the Wild. Wings, flying machines, and the notorious air bike, like I mentioned, do not help to solve this issue at all. Tall mountain need to get up? Air bike. Need to cross a large body of water? Air bike. Traveling through the sky? Air bike. It breaks the expected gameplay loop so much that, again, you don't need to ever traverse the world in any other way. For the quest that gets you to the Construct Factory, you need to go speak to Toro, a part of the Zonai research team, in Kakariko Village and speak to him about the Ring Runes. You'll then go to Drakuzu Lake in the Faron region to investigate the Zonai ruins there, where you will obtain all 3 pieces of the charge set and use it to calm the thunderstorm on the Thunderhead Isles. Inside the Thunderhead Isles is the Construct Mask, which leads you down to the Construct Factory through Topio's Hollow. I pretty much skipped this in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I have no clue where my footage of this is, and I'm not even sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but all I know is that the thunderstorm is not cleared in my main save file, which means that I must have done something wrong because of that. Like I said, you're supposed to use the charge set to calm the thunderstorm, but like using an air bike, you can just totally skip it and fly to Dragonhead Island to get the Construct Mask and open up the big door. The sky breaks the expected gameplay loop so much that it's even laughable to even need the surface. I'm not really a riding horse guy in video games, but I feel so bad for the people who do enjoy riding horses in video games. You guys just got the worst end of the deal from this. If you have ever made the air bike in Tears of the Kingdom and have saved it to your auto build schematics, it is infinitely easier to open auto build, make an air bike with Zonite, than it is to go to a stable and get your horse. Heck, most of the creative sandbox this game allows you to rip through negates the need to ever touch the surface, like I've said so many times. While most of the game does take place on the surface, it's foolish to use any of the returning traversal options from Breath of the Wild. I will say there are a few cool areas in the sky. The low gravity zones, for example, it shakes up how Link moves and how different objects move in the world, and I'm a huge sucker for low gravity or anti-gravity areas in video games. I love them. I do also enjoy the few Gleeok arenas that are up in the sky if they weren't such a bore to travel to. There are 3 of these to be exact, and each of them houses a King Gleeok. a giant 3-headed dragon monster with each head possessing the elements of ice, fire, and lightning respectively. While the arenas are dull and recycled, the boss fights are difficult enough to make this fact negligible. However, I haven't done any of these in my playthrough because I cannot make it clear enough how boring it is to traverse empty sky for a few minutes, do a fairly easy boss fight for an experienced player like myself, and then dip out. I mean, yes, the boss fights are fun and you do need to come up with some creative solutions to defeat the Gleeoks, but the satisfaction of beating them is made much drier by the lackluster rewards. You receive the obvious monster parts, but you'll also get Sage's Wills. I hate these. These are stupid. You'll need 4 of these to upgrade a Sage's power. Exchanging them in a goddess statue will upgrade the Sage's attack power and their ability cooldown. This is the same hot garbage the Champions Ballad gave us for defeating the same bosses again. And don't get me started on how the Sages are a huge downgrade from the Champion abilities. I won't be talking about the Sages because otherwise we would be here for even longer than we need to be, and this video is already starting to feel like a retrospective. To wrap this section up, the Sky Islands are simply missing content. They're unpolished, unfinished, and sloppy. It's a lazy attempt at trying to make a world more interesting without doing too much. Speaking of which, I think Skitty Bitty said it best.
I've heard many people say that the Depths was the best kept secret of Tears of the Kingdom prior to its release. It should have stayed kept.
The Depths are boring. I fail to see how anyone could praise them for being the best kept secret when there is nothing of substance down here. On paper, the Depths being an inverted world from the surface is really cool. In execution, however, not so much. Overall, the Depths aren't that involved with the rest of the world or story. There are a few quests to do down here, but most of them are optional, and that's really all you need to travel to the Depths for to complete these. The world is largely uninspired. The devs took the surface world, flipped it upside down, removed weather, biomes, a concrete day and night cycle, and made it this ugly gray color palette. And outside of the quests, the one thing that really would make the player even want to come down to the Depths are light roots. They help to light up the world, hence their name. The first time you enter the Depths, it's pitch black, and that is really cool. But if you think journeying a pitch black world like the Typhlow ruins in Breath of the Wild is cool, it's not. It's really not. And I mean, even traveling period is made totally useless by the fact that every single light route is connected to a shrine. You can simply find a shrine on the surface, switch to the Depths map, place a stamp there, go there, lo and behold, a light route. I mean, there are some cool rewards and areas to explore in the Depths, but it's also video gamey. The Zonai are said to be people from the sky, so why is there stuff in the Depths? I will briefly go over some egregious plot holes later in this video, but let me get back to the Depths. Like I said, the world is very video gamey. Why is this abandoned mine here? So you can explore it. Why are these Zonai device platforms everywhere? So you can build things. Why are these ghost soldiers holding weapons everywhere? So you can collect them. And don't get me started on how the shadow soldiers are completely pointless. If you've played Tears of the Kingdom for a solid amount of time, you've probably come across a few of these in your journey through the Depths, and it's very obvious the devs want the player to come down here and collect these weapons. Now, the weapons that the shadow soldiers hold are pristine versions of weapons you can find on the surface. This is because in-game lore says the upheaval made all the weapons decayed and less powerful, but I guess you can find the clean versions or pristine versions of them in the Depths. So with this, the devs, very obviously placed the better versions of the weapons in this more difficult area to explore, which I think is appreciated. But they placed them in the most, just nondescript places on the map. I mean, to me, it seems completely brainless to place these stronger weapons in an area that the average player isn't going to explore that much. I mean, at least in Breath of the Wild, we knew where we could find the strong weapons. Hyrule Castle. That's where all the Royal Guard's weapons were. That's where all just the normal royal weapons were. That's where the Hylian shield was. Yes, these weapons all do exist in Tears of the Kingdom, but the Royal and Royal Guards weapons, at least the good versions of them, can only be found from Shadow Soldiers. I mean, on a completely unrelated note to the depths, the weapon power in this game is abysmally worse compared to Breath of the Wild. The strongest weapon in the game is very obviously a pristine Royal Guards Claymore, but you can only find these in the area underneath the Gerudo Highlands in the depths. If the player knows what they're looking for, the shape of these pedestals are pretty easy to identify on the map. They look like this. But even if you do find one, there's no guarantee you'll get the weapon you want. Each Shadow Soldier is programmed to give the player only weapons from a certain class, those classes being Sword, Claymore, and Spear. But you'll always get the Traveler's variations of these weapons if you don't first break the decayed and unfused version of any of these weapons on the surface. So not only do I have to go to Hyrule Castle to obtain the Royal Guards weapons anyways, they aren't even the good versions of them, and then I have to break it to even have a chance of finding the best version of it in the depths. It's time-consuming and tedious, and the player is, again, never ever told to do this. Ignoring these video gamey aspects of the depths, there are a few fun things to do down here. All the Colosseums are a great challenge, but with really awful rewards. They're just recycled DLC and amiibo content from Breath of the Wild. The abandoned mines are a very quick and easy way to exchange your Zonite for crystallized charges to upgrade your battery for Zonite devices. And there are a couple different biomes in the depths, but it is mostly just the same kind of like field biome. The only large difference in biome is obviously underneath Death Mountain where the lava exists, but that's just about it. And once again, travel is made trivial by using the infamous air bike. But even that can be a challenge, especially if you don't have all your light routes unlocked. Like I said, it is pitch black in areas where the light route's light can't reach. But there are walls in the depths. In case you hadn't noticed from the B-roll footage I'm rolling of the surface world and the depths world, water means a giant, unclimbable wall in the depths. Well, you can climb it, but you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to hit the depth ceiling at some point. So you could just be calmly traveling along with your air bike, and then bang, wall, and you didn't even see it. If we do want to try and look at the positives to this, I guess it is kind of like a challenge to travel down here, and that's the point of the depths. It's more challenging than the overworld, especially with all the enemies down here being covered in gloom, and when you get hit by an enemy infested with gloom, they take away your ability to heal some hearts based on the amount of damage they deal to you. I mean, this is a pretty cool concept, and I think it does create, again, another challenge for the player to overcome. But other than these very few things that, again, aren't entirely necessary for the player to come and do, the depth search is boring. Now it's finally time to talk about the shrines. I've probably mentioned them just a couple times here in this video, and you've probably been eagerly expecting my opinions about them. Now, I don't want to spend too much time here because I do still need to talk about the dungeons, but knowing me, I'm probably going to ramble about something that isn't even on my script. There are 152 shrines in Tears of the Kingdom. That is 32 more than Breath of the Wild. Want to take a guess where those 32 shrines are? That's right, the sky. Of the 32 sky shrines, 14 of them are empty or blessing shrines. That number goes up to 15 if you do want to include the unlit blessing that is placed on the sky shrine in the South Gerudo sky. So this means that almost half of the shrines in the sky are a chest and a light of blessing. Now I could spend a while berating the repetitive designs of the shrines, but I don't really have time for that, but I guess I will briefly go over some gripes I have with them. 10 of the 14 empty shrines in the sky are attached to a shrine quest. Now shrine quests are typically very fun. They often have unique puzzles or riddles that the player has to solve to unlock the shrine. But these 10 shrine quests are get a crystal and bring it to a shrine pedestal. So if you've been following with the math so far, that means that roughly 1/3 of every single sky shrine is transport crystal to pedestal. And don't get me started on the tutorial shrines. There are quite a few of these in Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but in concept, these are pretty cool. It introduces a player to a concept. If it weren't for the fact that we learned all of these concepts and ideas at a base level on the Great Sky Island, the game's tutorial, it's redundant to the point of boredom. I don't need to learn how to use the fan again because I figured it out on the Great Sky Island when I had to attach it to some logs to cross a river. The idea of using a shrine to teach me how to use the device is so repetitive and it's so annoying. 2 of the empty shrines in the sky exist solely for the point of being travel points. One of them is on your way up the Rising Island chain during the Wind Temple quest, and the other is on Dragon Head Island, right in front of the big door you need to open. Now, these two empty shrines are passable at best and lazy at the worst. The devs could have at least put some effort to make a puzzle in these. It didn't have to be complicated, it could just be super simple, but something that is worth the time it takes to travel there. I mean, and that's the problem with most of the shrines in this game. They're lazy or too simple. Most of the shrines simply boil down to, oh yeah, cool hand. But most of them could be skipped by just fusing a bomb or a rocket to your shield. I like what Skitty said in their video referring to the shrines and their solutions.
I'm not saying that having a puzzle with multiple solutions is a bad thing, but this is not a puzzle with multiple solutions. It's a puzzle with a kill switch.
Like they said, they aren't multi-solution. But if the devs had taken more time to really flesh out the puzzles in this game, they could just be multi-solution and they wouldn't have kill switches. These shrines would restrict the player from abusing in-game mechanics. Now, I know that in Breath of the Wild, you could use the wind bomb to skip most of the shrines, but that's not so much abusing a mechanic as it is abusing the game engine. The developers didn't intend for Link to be hurled across the world at Mach 100, but the devs did intend for the player to use Fuse to attach a bomb flower or a rocket to Link's shield. Fuse and Recall pretty much break the flow of every single shrine in this game. It is vastly easier in most cases to use Ultra Hand and move a platform up, move it back down, step on it, and use Recall. Or even just move it up, recall it, and then ascend through it. Like, there are so many different solutions and different ways you can use Link's abilities to just skip puzzles entirely. And because of this, the puzzles simply just seem asinine. I'm playing through Echoes of Wisdom right now. When I tell you that the puzzles in this game are vastly more complex than the puzzles in Tears of the Kingdom, I mean it. I genuinely spent 30 minutes in this room trying to figure out how to solve this puzzle. I mean, that's frustrating as a player to, sit in the same room for an extended amount of time, not knowing what the solution is. But at least I was trying things or trying to figure out how to move on. In Tears of the Kingdom, again, I can just fuse a rocket to my shield and, oh, look at that, I'm done with the shrine. Now, there are a handful of good gems in this game. The Proving Ground shrines are quite enjoyable, I would say. I also had a lot of fun trying to figure out the solution for Kudanisar Shrine out in the Garuda region. One of the puzzle lock balls, or whatever you want to call them, is launched across the room in this shrine, and it's your goal to make your way across a floor made entirely of sinking sand using wooden planks or boats or the sled, I guess, to try and retrieve this ball and bring it back to its pedestal. Now, you can simply just use Recall and bring the ball back to Link by the shrine door, but I didn't think to use that in my first playthrough, so I quite enjoyed this shrine when I completed it. Again, there's just a lot to dissect with the shrines, and I don't have time to do it, but hopefully you get the point. They're lackluster. I keep saying this is going to be a short section. This is the plot holes plus dungeons, but knowing me, it's definitely not going to be a short section. So the dungeons definitely do exist, but whoever said that the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom are going to be a return to traditional Zelda dungeons, thank you for lying straight to my face. The dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom are pretty much the Divine Beasts 2.0. The puzzles in Tears of the Kingdom's dungeons do not feel involved or complicated enough to be considered traditional Zelda. I'm young, I didn't play Ocarina of Time growing up. My first Zelda game was actually Breath of the Wild, and I loved it. And it made me fall in love with the Legend of Zelda series. Since completing Breath of the Wild, obviously I've played Tears of the Kingdom, but I have also gone back and played Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I've also played Zelda 1, Zelda 2, and A Link to the Past. Now, I know that's not a wide scope of Zelda titles, but I do know what the dungeons look like in those games. They're long. They have complicated puzzles. They're infested with enemies. They feel awesome. Tears of the Kingdom just brings back the same terminal BS we had to deal with in Breath of the Wild. I mean, at least the boss fights are cool. Except you, Mark the Rock. I feel that the only deeply involved dungeons in this game are the Lightning Temple and the Construct Factory. Unlike the other three sages that follow you around in the temples, Riju needs to have a clear path to Link so you can use her ability. She can't just teleport to you.
What? Fireballs now? Looks like we're stuck again. The fireball stopped. I'm on my way, Link.
So what this does is it forces the player to solve the dungeon in a linear manner. A similar thing occurs when you go through the Construct Factory. You have to go to each of the different depots, which are a good distance away from the primary Construct Factory, and you have to find a way to bring back this specific part. Deep and involved dungeons is what people want in this game, and what we got left us sorely disappointed. And don't get me started on how the dungeons just confuse the lore even more. They feel random. I mean, they are mostly connected to the regions they are placed in, but they don't have any relevance to Ganon being the villain. If Ganondorf's goal in this game is to prevent Link from attaining the power of each of the sages via the secret stones, why would he place bosses for Link to defeat at each of these temples where the secret stones are? To me, it would make more sense for Ganondorf to try and steal them from these different temples and put them somewhere else on the map. I mean, it truly seems counterintuitive to the goal of the villain. And hopefully you agree with me. There are a lot of issues and a lot of egregious plot holes, like I said, in this story. So again, I highly recommend watching Skitty Bitty's video as they go into a great detail of the game's story. I also want to mention what is probably the biggest elephant in the room and the most contentious point of discourse about this game. Sheikah, you mean to tell me that between the roughly like 6 or 7 years between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, all of this is gone? Zelda says in one of her voice memories attached to the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Tears of the Kingdom that one day the Sheikah tech disappeared because Ganondorf was defeated in the Great Calamity. At least that's what she thinks is the reason. But that literally does not explain or help anything, because why didn't it disappear when they defeated Ganon or sealed him away 10,000 years ago? This simply just has to be a stupid cop-out for making a new game. The Sheikah were shafted in this game and it's not funny. There was a reason for all of this technology existing. Now it's all gone. We don't have an explanation for why it's gone, and all the characters act like nothing happened. The only good thing to come from the Sheikah in this game is Purah, and she's just a side character. Now that I've done quite a bit of rambling about the issues in this game, I'm going to draw back a bit and talk about a reimagining, or maybe even just like an alternate sequel to Breath of the Wild, because that might be what we need at this point. For the sake of story continuity, Tears of the Kingdom really messed it up. So I just think Nintendo should just move on and just make an alternate sequel at this point. I pointed out earlier that there are many egregious plot holes in this game's story, so let's start by maybe addressing a couple of those. The easiest way to fix them is simply by making Ganondorf aware of Link and his goal much earlier in the story. At a baseline, Ganondorf needs to know that Link's goal is to defeat him. Ganondorf very clearly wants to take over Hyrule, but his opposition Link is never made known to him until he is sealed away during the Imprisoning War, which makes his motivation or like justification for upheaving Hyrule make no sense. We do see in memories Ganondorf attempting to make his way into Raru's close circle so he can obtain the power of the secret stones for himself. But why? We very clearly know that Ganondorf is evil, but you'd think that Zelda, since she traveled back in time and we know that she defeated Calamity Ganon, the name Ganondorf would be ringing alarms in her head. This guy is evil. His name is Ganondorf. Like, come on. I mean, don't get me started on how the devs just absolutely dropped the ball when incorporating time travel into the story. If Zelda had simply brought up Ganondorf to Raru and the sages much earlier in the story when she traveled back in time, we might have seen Ganondorf attempt to stop the sages earlier and maybe even obtain the secret stones for himself, which would justify his want to destroy Hyrule. If this had happened, he maybe could have survived the Imprisoning War and caused some more damage. I don't know, but what they did is stupid. I mean, this would have made for a vastly more interesting story than what we got. I like to believe that the events of the Imprisoning War take place well before the Calamity 10,000 years ago, which would mean that the current and present time is well far in the future from the Imprisoning War, which means for over 10,000 years, Ganondorf would have been sealed underneath Hyrule Castle. And Zelda turning into the Light Dragon? Oh boy, this is where time travel continuity just gets thrown out the window. Yes, this scene is very emotional, but it doesn't help explain why two Zeldas exist at the same time. No matter which way you try and spin it, it will never explain why the Light Dragon is never seen in Breath of the Wild. I know time travel is a very hard plot device to utilize well, but it doesn't exempt Tears of the Kingdom from just being awfully written. And if I'm going to be honest, somehow Ganondorf Returned is a much better story than the time travel BS. I definitely talked about the story for way too long, and if I talk about it any longer, we're going to be here for much longer than we need to be. So let me talk about the sky. I do love the concept of the sky. I think it just needs to be brought to life more. The contrast of the yellow color theme compared to the green of the overworld is great visually, but I think there needs to be more variety with what the Sky Islands look like. They shouldn't all be this yellow color. In the Hebra region, the Sky Island should be cold and icy like the ice section on the Great Sky Island. It's the only section in the sky that actually has ice on it. Maybe like in the Gerudo region, the grass is that yellow color and dead, or maybe like a little bit more brown. In the Elden region, it can be like dead and ashy. But there 100% should be more Sky Islands in Central Hyrule. The sky was just so wasted. Nintendo should have allowed the player to discover things on the Sky Islands that explain why they're here, what they do, or maybe even who created them. There is so much lore to uncover with the Sky Islands, and none of it exists in Tears of the Kingdom. Along with that, there should just be better travel in the sky. I know I mentioned like the air bike and wings, but they should be like toned back in a way to where it doesn't completely break travel, but still make it feel necessary or like an important part of the game, because we can't just get rid of core game mechanics. I would also say we need to have better rewards. I do appreciate that Nintendo brought back the DLC in Amiibo gear, so we don't have to go and buy $30 plastic figurines to access a piece of gear maybe once a day, but they shouldn't have been used as the big rewards for challenges. It feels like the devs threw them in haphazardly. They needed to give the players the reason to explore the depths. There are some new pieces of gear, but the only standout one with a useful ability is the glide suit, which increases your air movement speed. All the other new suits don't really do that much to help the player. These disappointing abilities are sloppy and lazy. It's a new world, Link should have new clothes. And while they did do that, like I said, the disappointing abilities don't make up for the suits, and some of them don't even look that good if I'm going to be honest. Just give Link new suits, they can have returning abilities, it just needs to be shaken up a little bit more. The depths honestly should just be cut. They serve no purpose other than just, hi, I'm here, I exist. So the depths should just be replaced with a more interesting and more complex cave system. Maybe there are some systems that haven't been explored, and it's up to us as the player to explore them and make a map of them. This would make for a better reward system as well. We can hide all of these different costumes or abilities or other treasures and whatnot at the end of these caves that haven't been explored. I mean, don't get me started on how the caves are simply just more copy and pasted assets. I can find the exact same things in pretty much every single shrine. Glowing cave fish, bright bloom seeds, bright caps, bomb flowers, the list goes on. It's another fantastic concept that just misses the mark. Something that is so appealing about a game like Minecraft, for example, is mining for diamonds. They're rare, hard to find, you have to go down to the bottom of the world to find them, and they feel satisfying to collect. Maybe Nintendo could include some stuff like that in these caves. Maybe there are certain rare items that you can only find in like Elden caves or something. So if you want to get like, a diamond or something, you go to these specific caves to find them because that's where they're the most abundant. Or maybe topaz are most abundant in the Gerudo region, and going to caves there will yield higher amounts of topaz. It's a very interesting concept and something that shakes up the expected gameplay loop, or the gameplay loop we already have, much more. Shrines, like I said, they're a joke in this game. I would much rather go through and play every single Breath of the Wild shrine again than whatever the heck we got in Tears of the Kingdom. And I know that these mini dungeons would definitely be the hardest part of the world to fix, correct, make different, yada yada, but they could have just kept the Sheikah shrines on the map, and a simple solution for their explanation of being there is the monks changed the puzzles to be simpler or just be treasure rooms. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It doesn't retcon them out of existence, and it keeps the reward systems for players still fully intact. And maybe the rewards after the end of these shrines, whether it's like a simpler puzzle or a small fight of some kind, maybe they can be the DLC and Amiibo gear. That's a great way to still incorporate them like Nintendo clearly wants to, but it doesn't make them the reward for completing a big challenge. And I think maybe another thing Nintendo could do is make the warp points inaccessible to the player in this game just to keep the map less cluttered. I mean, they don't have to, but I think making it that way, especially if Nintendo wants to include other shrine or other mini dungeon-like things, I think it would just help to clean up the visual aspect of the map. It's a very simple tweak to make, and for people who really enjoy puzzles, me, I'm people, I love puzzles, this would be a great way to keep the game fresh. And to go along with these slightly tweaked shrines, maybe Nintendo could have Divine Beast rooms. Possibly when Ganondorf came back, or when his power became more powerful, he destroyed the Divine Beast so he could take over Hyrule in peace. It once again adds another layer of lore to the game that is just completely retconned in Tears of the Kingdom. At this point, I'm feeling like a broken record, and I don't want to drag on this video any longer than it needs to be. But hopefully you're starting to see the flaws with this game and what can be done to fix them. Tears of the Kingdom is a wildly broken sequel. There are many missing elements that make the story and the gameplay fall apart. If you'd like to see a full video where I rewrite Tears of the Kingdom in its entirety, please let me know in the comment section or like this video, whatever it is, because that would definitely be a huge project to commit to, and I don't really want to fully commit to it if people aren't going to watch that. So leave a comment down below if you'd like to see a fully rewritten Tears of the Kingdom. Other than that, thank you everyone for watching this video and sitting through my ramble. I can't say I've done a video quite like this, but I think it's something that I'm definitely going to look a little bit more into as I continue to make videos on my channel. Even though I may have rambled a lot, I still hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless. But as a YouTuber, I do have legal requirements to fulfill, so this is the part where I tell you to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot and just means a lot to me as a small creator. But with that out of the way, once again, thank you so much for watching. I have been the one and only Bag, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.